Shalom Aleichem everyone, it's Rabbi Dr. Jack Cohen with the Dating and Shalom Bayis series. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'd like to give over a fantastic Dvar Torah which will help us in our Shalom Bayis, especially these days, epidemic or pandemic number 2 in Corona. Last week's Parsha was beautiful. It was very interesting because it was the first shidduch that was ever made that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. We know that in one of the 7 brachas of the Shevar brachas, we say the following: Sameach tesamach, re'ayim ahuvim, kisamechacha yitzircha b'gan eden mikedem. Please Hashem, allow this couple, this chassan and kala, this chatan and kala that are standing under the chuppah, to be as happy with each other as your first couple, Adam and Chava. Our rabbis tell us that when Adam and Chava were created, they were actually fused as one. And what Hashem did was to disconnect them. He took a rib, literally, from Adam, and then he rebuilt out of that Chava. Thus, our rabbis tell us Adam's subsequent reunion with his wife was actually a reunion of 2 entities that had originally been one. That is very different today from us, in which we're not really being reunited, but all couples post facto, Adam and Chava, were actually 2 entities coming together for the first time. Not so. Every marriage today, as I said, where 2 people creating a relationship were born as discrete individuals and raised in different families before coming together to become one marital unit. To carry this even further, marriage today is less like a reattachment of a severed limb than the transplanting of a newly donated one. What does that mean for us? What lesson can we learn from that? Something fascinating. Well, we know that in the world of medical transplantation, when a limb is being transplanted into another human being, for example, a liver transplant, a kidney transplant, we know that it carries the risk of rejection, that the host body may not accept the new transplanted limb. The body's natural reaction to introduction of something else with its own distinct genetic identity is to seek to show it the door. We don't want it. The body, unfortunately, has a propensity to reject the new portion, the new limb, because the immune response, which is what Hashem gifts us with in order to have defense mechanism from foreigners, is essential to fighting elements such as infection. Likewise, a human soul's natural response to the intimate introduction of another portion to it is to seek to protect itself from the quote-unquote threat. So what do doctors do, as you all know? Doctors address the transplantation danger with immunosuppressant drugs. What doctors do is they introduce a host of drugs into the host so that the host does not discard or reject the new limb. Chemicals that prevent rejection. Or put another way, they weaken the host's body of the sense of self, which is a fascinating nimshal, a lesson that I'm about to teach you here. That in the context of marriage is very invaluable advice. The spiritual emotional transplant that each member of the couple undergoes needs an immunosuppressant of its own for the marriage to succeed, as if to say, you have to suppress yourself. If you want a fantastic marriage, it's like a transplant with immunosuppressant drugs. When you transplant a limb into another person, you also inject immunosuppressant drugs so that the person, the host himself, suppresses their own gaiva, their own ego, their own sense of self. It requires, in other words, no less than in the case of an organ transplant, a weakening of self. No drug will do what alone can work here, sheer force of will and love. Like everything important, of course, it's more easily said than done, but knowing one's objective is the object of the journey. Newlyweds can disagree over whether the window in the fall or the winter should be open or closed. But the chilled spouse should be the one insisting that it remain open for the comfort of the overheated one. That chilled spouse, or every one of us, should be sort of suppressing our own selves in order to be able to accommodate our loved one, our spouse. That's the key lesson to be learned here. That similarly to a medical immunosuppressant, when we have a transplant, we have to inject the immunotransplant into the host, because if we make the host have a less sense of themselves, we need to have a less sense of ourselves when we're living with another person, when we're married to someone else. That's the elixir. That's the fluid that allows for longevity. This is something that my dear Rabbi, the Gadol Hador Avigdor, always told us. Let things fly by. Let the other person have what they want first. Give in. Be mevater. And windows, of course, are only the most mundane examples of how to get along with our spouses. Truth be told, the medical metaphor message isn't only for newlyweds, it's for everyone who's been married for any length of time. Because transplant recipients, after all, need to take their medication for life in order to be able to maintain and keep the new limb. We need to have the same medication within ourselves, that we're always suppressing ourselves. If we can learn from the metaphor of a medical transplant that we need to suppress ourselves, suppress our egos, suppress our sense of zich, then we can expect fantastic marriages. And if anyone would like my help in Shidduchim and Shalom Bayis, or help you with analysis with Shidduch herein, or we'd like to get into one, and need help with that, or you have issues in a marriage, please feel free to reach out to me from anywhere in the world. That's 305-206-1916. Or please reach me on email at drjackcohen18@gmail.com. Thank you. Have a great day.